Hey friends, it's Rabbi Jenny Solomon at Beth Meyer Synagogue here with a Mincha moment. So what I wanted to offer today is we have just entered last week, we entered into the month of Adar. And one of the things that we sing and that we say and that we are invited to feel as we enter into this month, we say, Misha nichnas Adar marbim besimcha, that when we enter into the month of Adar, we increase, we expand joy, simcha. And this year, we actually have 2 months of Adar. So the whole Hebrew calendar thing is complicated, but in essence, of course, we go by the moon. We count time by the lunar calendar, but we intercalculate the sun so that our holidays fall in the proper season. And that means that about every 7 out of 19 years, we will actually have 2 months of Adar to do that sort of calendar correction. So this is one of those years in which we have 2 months to expand and bring out joy. And one of the reasons that our rabbis taught us that this month is a month for joy is, of course, the holiday of Purim is coming, which is associated with parting and redemption and really creating an atmosphere of joy and celebration. So that actually happens in the second month of Adar, not the Adar that we're currently in. So the next new moon halfway through that month will be the holiday of Purim. But I want to suggest that there's also something seasonally that connects us to joy. After all, I guess depending on where you live in the world, but here in North Carolina, it is still our wintry season, but we're beginning to get glimmers of spring, of the possibility of new life. We're in this sort of liminal moment when you can sometimes find flowers and buds on trees. On our Shabbat walk, there are some flowers that line the street, these vines, and you can see right now they're just these really tight buds, but I know that in a couple of weeks, they'll become little yellow flowers. And so we begin to feel that quality of hope that, in fact, warmer weather and spring are on their way. I'm feeling a little bit of this also in terms of where we are in the pandemic. Of course, none of us have a crystal ball, but I do feel this sort of moment and motion towards greater healing when this virus no longer impacts us in such pervasive and challenging ways. But I really want to talk about how we can even command joy. Like, how do we make joy happen? And how do we understand joy within our spiritual practice? So one of the things that I love about our culture and about the Hebrew language itself is that there are, oh my gosh, I can think of probably at least 10 words for joy. I mean, even just think about the blessing that we say under the wedding chuppah, under the wedding canopy, in which we recite all these words, Gila, Rina, Ditza, Chedva, Simcha. There are so many words for joy. And I'd like to think that that's because joy is such an essential part of our lives, of the human experience, and that our spiritual tradition really encourages us to make space for that. So how do we make space for that? Because, of course, none of us feel joy all the time. And it's also hard to sort of make joy happen, to conjure that up. And let's face it, life is hard. Being human is hard. And we're living now, 2+ years into a global pandemic. So there's a lot to be not joyful about. But I want to suggest that there's actually a couple ways that we can use our mindfulness practice and our spiritual practice to cultivate joy. So the first is really setting our intention for joy. So really being intentional about giving ourselves opportunities to do things that that elicit joy. Being in nature, making time for connection with dear ones, reading, learning, whatever it is, actually cooking, whatever you do drinking your coffee. I'm now talking about my own joy. Whatever you do that brings you joy, that these are actually important parts of living, without which we feel deprived and less alive. So setting our intention for making space for joy, for activities that bring us joy. The second is growing our awareness. So when we say blessings, when we slow down and taste our food, when we make space in prayer or meditation to count our blessings and to be grateful, these are all ways in which we can bring awareness to the joy that is actually already here. And along those lines, I think there's a way that we can ritualize joy as well. You know, when we enter into Shabbat each week, we sing Yismechu Hashamayim, that the heavens, the cosmos is sort of leaping and clapping and celebrating for joy. So there are actual rituals that we can do in our morning prayers, in our afternoon time, in our evening rituals, in which we can really name the joy that is already here. And Simcha doesn't only come from, like being at a party or a joyful occasion. Simcha can also arise from closing our eyes and taking a couple of deep breaths out in the fresh air, and feeling held and connected. We can find Simcha when we look into the eyes of someone we care about and feel that sense of connection. We can ritualize Simcha in sort of the rhythms of our week, whether we're moving into Shabbat or into a new moon, or going to bed, just feeling our bodies rise and fall with each breath. So there's so many ways that we can also ritualize our Simcha, our joy as well. So it seems a little preposterous that we're supposed to all enter into this month of Adar, or in this year, in the case of this year, 2 months of Adar, and feel joy. But actually we say marbim b'simcha. Not that we should feel joy, but that we should grow joy. So I pray that this season is one in which each one of us, in our own little but not so little ways, can plant the seeds just to grow a little joy, grow a little simcha. That seems like something we can all do. And maybe together, my little bits of joy and your little bits of joy will actually grow the joy in our world, something we all so deeply need. All right, shalom, peace.